Space is really big, and this lens is really tiny, and I'm going to use it to photograph space. Hi, I'm Walt. This is Delta Astrophotography, and we're going to use a Nifty 50 to photograph the Milky Way. It is June, and that means it's prime Milky Way season. It will be out from the time the sun goes down and all night to the time the sun comes up, moving from the southeast to the south to the southwest. The Milky Way core is one of the easiest astrophotography targets because it's so huge. It takes up a massive chunk of the sky and it's very bright. You can totally see it with your naked eye. When photographing the Milky Way with wide-angle lenses, it's nice to get like a good landscape foreground and then the Milky Way in the background. But with the Nifty 50, we're just gonna zoom right in and just photograph the Milky Way core itself. It's like the easiest deep sky astrophotography target because you don't need any kind of tracking mount or fancy computers or anything like that. Just a camera, the lens, and a tripod. That being said, star trackers are kind of nice to shoot the Milky Way with. So we're gonna shoot without a star tracker and with, so we can see both results. When photographing the Milky Way, you're gonna wanna get out to a dark location. It's not gonna be easy to photograph the Milky Way through city light pollution. I'm out here in a Bortle 3/Bortle 4 sky. It's, I guess, considered rural skies. Rural, it's hard to say. Man, it's hot out here. Unfortunately, I'm not able to photograph the Milky Way from my backyard, from my front yard, from my driveway, because of this ridiculous street light right here. But luckily, I can walk to the field across the street. Or oh God, I don't know what that was, but I better not stick around to find out. Let's talk about equipment for a minute. For the camera, I just really couldn't decide if I wanted to use my Canon T5i, also known as the 700D, or my Canon 6D. Now the difference between the two is the Canon T5i is a crop sensor camera. Crop sensors are typically what beginners buy first because they're a lot more affordable, but they are a little more zoomed in. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. When we're doing astrophotography without a star tracker, just a camera, lens, and tripod, the amount of exposure time is crucial, and the more zoomed in you are, the less exposure time you have before the stars start to trail. With the Canon T5i, I'm going to be limited to about 5 seconds of exposure time before I start to see star trails. The Canon 6D is a full frame camera, so it'll have a wider field of view. Full frame cameras are typically more expensive. This is a 6D, so it's kind of old, so they're not that expensive anymore. A lot less people use full frame cameras because they are more expensive. But I think this is going to get a better field of view, and I'll be able to do longer exposures, maybe between 8 and 10 seconds. But more of you probably have a crop sensor camera. So you know what? I'm just going to use both. For a tripod, I'm just going to be using this Manfrotto Element tripod. It's got a nice ball head on the top, and this will do just fine. I'll also be using an intervalometer for each camera. This will allow me to take photographs without touching the camera, and it'll also allow me to take a series of images without having to touch the camera. Speaking of taking a series of images, if you're brand new to astrophotography, we do a process called stacking where we take the same picture over and over and over again and then stack them in a stacking software specifically designed for this. It's going to remove a lot of the noise and bring out much more detail. You see, with each picture you're taking, you're collecting more and more photons. And when we stack the images together, we combined all those photons so we can get more detail and we can get rid of some of the noise. I will be making a processing tutorial on this session, so I'll show you more about stacking in that video. So let's go outside and set up and shoot. Maybe we'll wait for the jaguar to go away, and then we'll go shoot with an epic musical montage of setting up. All right, I'm done. What do you think? Now I'm back and I actually have the remote hooked up. So I'm gonna start my focus routine. First thing, I'm gonna make sure that my camera is actually set to manual mode, and so is my lens. Now we're gonna change the camera settings to a high ISO, something like 3200, f1.8, and a shutter speed of 30 seconds. I'm gonna turn on live view. I'm gonna point it up at the star Vega, which is high in the east right now. And I'm just gonna turn my focus wheel until it's as small of a pinpoint as possible. Now that I'm done focusing, I'm gonna turn my camera back towards the Milky Way, which is a little bit more in the southeast, not just the east. It's just kind of right over here, just right over that way. I'm gonna set my camera settings to ISO 3200, an aperture of 2.2, and a shutter speed of 5 seconds for the T5i. Now all I need to do is take a test photo just pressing this button right here. As long as I'm not touching the camera, it should be good to go. So let's try it out. All right, so we're gonna hit the play button, and this is what I got. Guys, this is a single shot at only 5 seconds, and I think that's pretty damn impressive. Holy crap. Didn't even use a star tracker. Now here's when things get real and serious and fun with the star tracker. So I have it facing north right now. I'm going to look through the polar scope. I have to make sure it's turned on so I can see the reticle or target inside the polar scope. And I'm going to try to put the North Star right in the middle of the reticle. I'm going to use an app called Polar Finder to show me exactly where the North Star should be. And I'm going to use my altitude lever here and my azimuth knobs to move it up, down, left, right, until I get the North Star exactly where it needs to be in the polar scope. Then I'm polar aligned and ready to rock. Next, I'll add my ball head adapter. And then my camera. I'll do the same focus routine that I did last night, but now I'm gonna change my camera settings pretty drastically. I'm gonna use a much lower ISO of 800. That'll keep the noise down and the dynamic range high, so I'll see more details. I'm gonna stop the aperture down to f4, so I'll have better looking stars. And then I'll switch my shutter speed to bulb mode. This will allow me to take as long of an exposure as I want to. To dial in the proper shutter speed, I'll have to use this, and I'm gonna dial in 3 minutes. I think we can get away with 3 solid minute exposures. So let's do a test shot and check it out. And here's what this one looks like on the back of the camera, and oh my God. I hardly feel like I even need to do any post-processing. This is amazing. Look at all the detail in those dust lanes or just dust clouds. Now I'll go ahead and program the intervalometer to take 20 exposures and then put the lens cap on and take about 10 more dark frames. I guess I should have talked more about dark frames for those of you who are brand new to astrophotography. They're basically just photographs of noise, both your camera's noise and thermal noise for when your sensor heats up from taking really long exposures. And the noise can get even worse during the summertime when it's hot outside. So you want to take them at the same time as your light frame so they'll be the same temperature. So yeah, all you got to do is put the lens cap on, keep your camera settings the same, and take a few dark photos, and then include them in your stack when you're stacking the rest of your images. Okay, time to go relax. Oh God, not again.
1 hour later.
Is it safe? All right, now let's jump into the computer and take a closer look at the 3 images we're going to be working with. The crop sensor, the full frame, and the full frame on a star tracker. Now these are going to be completely unstacked and unprocessed, just raw photos. Here's our first image. It is the crop sensor Canon T5i. Now if we zoom in, we can see that the stars still aren't quite round even at 5 seconds. Let's go back to full screen here. When we look at the size of the photo, we see the stars start to trail even more, and this is coma. Also, I'm definitely seeing some pink around some of the stars. This is color fringing or chromatic aberration. And most of these problems are caused by the lens being at f2.2. If I was to stop it down, I probably could get rid of that, but it would be very dark. This is already kind of a dark image, but there's still a lot of detail in there, and I think I'm gonna be able to process this quite well. You can absolutely tell I'm using an astro-modified camera because you can see a lot more red in the Lagoon Nebula right here, and up here in the Eagle and Omega Nebulas. But now let's take a look at the full frame camera. This one's not modified, so you can see it's a lot cooler, but with an 8-second exposure, I'm actually getting a good bit more Milky Way, and the full frame sensor is a larger, so I'm getting more of the target in here as well. We're gonna zoom in. Still not 100% round over here. And this is at 8 seconds, still f2.2. Let's zoom out. Now let's start to look at the corners. Stars are definitely starting to stretch out more in the corners, but since this is a full frame camera, We get some extremely bad corners down here where the stars start to look like little birds flying around. Overall, this image still is a little bit better though. I think there's more Milky Way to play with. It's definitely brighter. We just got to deal with the bats that are flying around in the corner here. And finally, let's take a look at the image taken on a star tracker. Now we can see this is much, much brighter, and there's a ton more detail in here. We can zoom in, and the stars are all round. And this is a 3-minute exposure, I believe. Let's take a look down here in the corners. They're not so bad in the corners anymore. And this is because I stopped it down to F4. It only gets bad when I get to the very bottom corners. And we still have the flying bats again. I'm just gonna do a quick levels adjustment so we can add a little more contrast. I'm gonna hit Control L here, and I'm gonna bring the darks over a little bit. And there, I just added a little more contrast, and now we can really see the amount of detail in this photo. And I think this is incredible. And I'm just gonna go ahead and start stacking these up and processing them. All right, guys, that's about it. Before I show you the 3 final process images, I'd just like to say a special thank you to today's sponsor, the angry, horrible Black Panther, Mr. Popo, that lives on my front porch. If you're wondering how I process any of these images, my next video will be a full Milky Way with a Nifty 50 processing tutorial, so be sure and subscribe and don't miss that. If you like anything about this video, please give me a like, it really helps the channel. Sorry I haven't been making more videos lately, I've been really busy at work, but I think it's finally gonna chill out. And as always, stay spacey everybody, clear skies, and we'll see you next time.